stretch, and it's Nyquist. Nyquist has taken the lead on the outside. Gunrunner second at the rail. 5 lengths back to Destin in third. And they come to the final furlong. Exaggerator is closing in. Nyquist to catch with a 16th to go. Gunrunner, Exaggerator on the outside. Nyquist and Exaggerator, they're coming to the line together. And Nyquist is still unbeaten. He has won the Kentucky Derby.
Welcome to the Paddock Pass with Brian Mariano on 104.5 The Team.
Here we go, fellas. It is Preakness weekend on this episode of the Paddock Pass. I am joined by producer Tom Guzlowski. Tom, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on? Good to be back.
Oh, yeah, man. Just, talking a little Derby, and then we're going to get into the Preakness Stakes this weekend. It was a huge weekend for me, though, betting at the Kentucky Derby.
Yes, it was.
It did pretty good. How about yourself?
Not as great.
Oh, no. Wait a second. We were talking beforehand when you and Levac came on last time about how American Pharoah paid your rent. Nyquist isn't paying your rent now?
Here's the thing. I watched the Derbies at a big party. Everyone's having a great time. People decide to dress up, watch the race. Nyquist wins. The one bad part was that because we were kind of far away from the TV, we had the volume high, but everyone's going nuts. Mm-hmm. Or actually, my father had thought Mo Heyman had snuck in, so he thought he was in great shape. He's like, yes, I got Nyquist, Mo Heyman. I think a long shot came in. We're going to be partying all night. And then it was Exaggerator. So he's like, all right, well, it's not going to pay that much. It was like Christmas Day where you're done unwrapping your gifts because you're looking forward to it for so long, the Derby. And then you're just kind of looking around like, all right, it's over now.
This is all I got?
All right,
this is it?
I got some winning tickets. Let's see what these are going to pay. And I think it was the worst paying Kentucky Derby in the last 20 years. So
yeah,
it barely paid at all.
Yeah, it was like one of the first times that the top 4 betting favorites came in 1, 2, 3, and 4. Mm. So, of course, everyone who had that super wasn't very happy. No. But I guess if they don't want it, I'll take it. Either way is fine.
It just felt like a letdown in comparison to other years, whether it's a long shot like Mind That Bird winning, whether it's American Pharoah fighting it off at the end and holding on, California Chrome or Barbaro being so impressive. This Kentucky Derby kind of came up a little empty, a little flat.
Let's take away from the pari-mutuel part of it and just go off of Nyquist's performance. Mm-hmm. What did you feel about that?
It was a perfect race. It's that right there. Third, fourth, waited, made the move. The concern going in was that if Nyquist, because of so many horses, maybe made the move too quick, that Exaggerator would catch Nyquist. And at the end, Exaggerator came down, closed like you and I and Levac had thought. And Nyquist made the right move at the right time. If he'd gone too early, Exaggerator probably would have caught him, but Nyquist ran the perfect race and ended up winning.
Well, like I said last week on the podcast, unfortunately, you were not available to come join us, whether we wanted to have you on every time or not. That's, I
was in Florida enjoying myself.
Yeah, God forbid. But anyway, if you watch the ride that Kent DeSormo gives Exaggerator, it was one of the best rides I've seen in a long time in that race. Mm-hmm. He stays inside, saves all the ground, and then was just short catching Nyquist. But in my opinion, I believe Gutierrez just reared back a little bit on Nyquist, knew he had the race won, and didn't really, tried to save a little energy coming into this weekend's Preakness. So I was interested after watching the race because, as we talked about before, I tried to beat him because I never thought I'm not going to bet anybody at 2-1. I don't care if it's Secretariat in the Kentucky Derby. 2-1 is just not a good price in a 20-horse field. I can't do it. So I tried to beat him, but after watching the race, I took away the fact that I was really impressed with the way this horse run, and especially for the fact that his style can work on all 3 of these races. Not only did it work in the Kentucky Derby, it can work this weekend in the Preakness, and of course, further on, 3 weeks from now in the Belmont, to where he set pretty much the same kind of trip American Pharoah did last year, just off the leaders. It wasn't a torrid fast pace. It was quick, but it wasn't crazy fast. There was no 21s, 43s, anything like that. Mm. But I'm really interested to see, not so much if I think Nyquist wins this weekend. I'm really interested to see what happens 3 weeks down the line. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Guys, if you look at the Preakness this weekend, is there one horse that you will look at to try and key in your exactas and your triples?
Overall, this field, you only have 3 horses that ran in the Kentucky Derby. Coming back to the Preakness, you have, of course, Exaggerator. You have the winner of the Kentucky Derby, Nyquist, and you have Lonnie, the Japanese horse. I feel like it's just a 2-horse race. Nyquist and Exaggerator are the 2 best horses. No one in this field has really jumped out to me and said, wow, this horse can really contend and take one of those 2 top dogs off. I kind of compared this Preakness race to One we saw a few years ago with I'll Have Another and Bodemeister, when those two were by far the best horses in that race, and they battled at the end with I'll Have Another holding on again and winning that race. Cherry Wine in the one hole, it was the horse we talked about 2 weeks ago, where if Cherry Wine is in the Kentucky Derby, that horse could have competed and maybe finished in the top 4. We never got an opportunity to see that. So Cherry Wine didn't become a worse horse in 2 weeks. It just didn't run. It's still a very good horse. So Cherry Wine's the horse I like, but a huge factor going into this race. And I texted you this 2 weeks ago, and Levac and Wolf, that there was that quick, maybe 2 to 3 minute burst of rain at Churchill Downs before the race, and said, get ready, this track's going to get wet. You look at every weather report right now for Preakness Saturday, 90 to 100% chance of rain all day long, starting at 10 a.m. all the way to post time. Exaggerator, exaggerator, exaggerator. If this gets wet, this becomes now Exaggerator's race to lose. So weather's a huge key this Saturday. Exaggerator, if the weather holds up like it's supposed to, is going to win this race.
See, I agree with you that weather's going to play a factor. And, of course, we're going to have Todd Schrupp from TVG on later in the podcast to answer these questions for us. He's live down at Pimlico. But I will argue this against you. I agree, because I was one of the believers that, God forbid, if it does rain, it's Exaggerator's race. But you got to remember, in the Kentucky Derby, it did rain.
Yeah.
And Nyquist won. It rained before the Florida Derby, and Nyquist won. So as much as even Doug O'Neill seems really confident that no matter whether it's a muddy or sloppy track, his horse is ready to run. So I believe this weekend's more of I'm going to take Nyquist knowing he's going to win the race. He'll probably be 2 to 5, and then try and get big exactas and triples underneath him. And the horse I'm looking at is Todd Pletcher's on the outside is Stradivari.
Okay.
Coming off the big allowance win. He broke his maiden, made the next step up, win an allowance race, and now you're jumping into Grade 1 Preakness. I think this horse has a lot of upside. He only knows how to win right now, so he doesn't know who he's running against. Frankly, the horse doesn't care who he's running against. So I think he's going to be a big factor, and I'm going to use him in exactas and triples. If I gave you $20, Tom Gozlowski, we did this before the Kentucky Derby, I'm going to do it now. Unfortunately, I tried to beat Nyquist. It didn't work. But I handed you $20. How are you going to make money in the Preakness?
You're gonna hate this bet, but I'm gonna do it. You're not gonna like it at all. But
Tell
here's
me
what
it's going to be the all button's going to be hit in this bet.
Oh yeah, but here's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be Exaggerator, Nyquist, all $18 bet. So $2 tri wheel.
Okay.
If you want me to stay away from the alls, I'll stay away from it for you, and I'll do this. I'll give you a $1 tri box, $6.
Okay.
Exaggerator, Nyquist, and Cherry Wine.
I like it.
The thing I wouldn't say concerned, but one of the things we learned last year, and Levac and you both told me this would have happened. I was out camping. I didn't have cell phone reception. I don't know why I was doing that, but I get a call coming in and saying it's pouring at the Preakness. American Pharaoh's going to lose. He's going to get beat.
Yep.
I'm like, every horse is jinx who runs in the Triple Crown, but you and Levac told me, don't worry about it, guys. Go put money on Pharaoh and hope for a long shot. And sure enough, it was a small field.
Yep.
The trifecta and superfecta was the biggest pain Preakness we had seen in close to 25 years.
That's right. You had Taylor Verve.
Yeah,
I was actually sitting in the studio watching that race and had to text you after and be like, did you have that? And you're like, yes, I did.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we'll see. Like you said, and I agree with you, 2 to 5 is most likely what Nyquist is going to go off at, unless some monster long shot comes in second and third. It's not going to be a huge pain race, even though there are more horses in this field than it was last year in 2015. But we'll see.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see, especially like we were talking about with the weather being a factor. But if I had $20 to go in and play, I'd play 2 different ways. You can do it this way. I'm going to play a $10 exacta box, Nyquist and Exaggerator. Okay. Or I'm going to play a $5 triple, Nyquist, Exaggerator. Last in third, I'm going to throw Cherry Wine, Stradivari, Awesome Speed, who's kind of a real long shot no one's really playing, and Lonnie, because I think the horse had a rough time in the Kentucky Derby, and I'm looking for a price there at Lonnie.
So you're looking at, just to clarify that bet, you're looking at Nyquist, Exaggerator 1, 2, and the rest of those horses.
And the rest of the horses in the third.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So if you're going up to the window, you're saying a $5 triple, Nyquist over Exaggerator, over Lonnie, Awesome Speed, Cherry Wine, and Stradivari. That's a $20 bet. And I'm assuming you're not gonna go and pay the rent with that bet. But I'm assuming that triple comes back for $2, $30 maybe.
It'd be, yeah.
You get it 2.5 times.
And it'd be interesting, and of course we know this, that if, for instance, Exaggerator finished in third or Nyquist finished in fourth, and you try to do almost a mix of what we did, just basically move those guys around and see if you could push them third or fourth, it would pay more. But we just don't see that happening because these are the two best horses in the race.
And this is one of the races that's so hard to really make money because if you're just playing ice cold exactas like we're talking about, last year you got lucky with a Tail of Irv, and that's what I'm trying to do in this triple. I would recommend if you really don't have a huge bankroll, just play a 50-cent triple and see what happens from there. It's only a $2 bet. You'll be just fine. And the one thing I'm going to ask Todd, and I don't know if you heard about this, it's not so much in New York, but it's spreading through the horse racing community. They're doing exchange wagering like they do in Great Britain.
No.
So the way this works is, guys, it's at Monmouth Park. They just started it open last weekend. Now, the way this works is, let's say we were betting the Preakness, okay? And I thought Nyquist had no chance. Okay? So he's on the tote board, he's 3-5. I'm offering you 8-5. And you can just bet me. So it's just me and you betting. Let's say it's $20. Okay, and I'm giving you 8-5 odds now. The way they want this to happen is the future of horse racing is to take away the tote idea, which they'll still keep, but it's more of a peer-on-peer type of bet. So, if you're looking at a race where there's a vulnerable favorite, okay, so it's a maiden race or whatever, and you know that this horse, it's the best example I can make, let's say it's a turf race at Saratoga. Chad Brown's horse is even money. But he's vulnerable. You don't really think the horse is that good. But then when the tote board, that type of style of betting, you need to pick a winner. Now, in this type of betting, you just don't have to pick a winner. You just have to pick the horse that's going to lose.
Very interesting.
Okay.
It's almost similar to almost a fantasy style of setting where it's one-on-one and you got to pick the, players or not players.
Exactly.
Right.
So the idea is I'm giving you a different type of odd, hopefully a better odds that you're looking for, and kind of enticing you to take it. I'm going to ask Todd his opinion on it. And the idea is to try and make money or find better odds for yourself. So like this weekend, we'll go back to the Preakness again. I know that I don't like Exaggerator. Okay. Maybe you do. Okay. So on the tote board, he's going to be 3-1 or 5-2. I'm going to offer you 8-1. So you're going to look at me like, wow, I'm going to get 8-1. Okay, sure. Here's my $20. But now I get everybody else and you get Exaggerator.
Very interesting.
So it's starting in New Jersey. It only happens in New Jersey right now. But they're already talking about tracks in California taking it. And I'm just waiting to hear back to talk to some people at NYRA to find out when it could happen right in our own backyard up at Saratoga. That should be an interesting change. This, of course, the Paddock Pass, joined by Tom Gozlowski, producer Goz, in to talk. So let's just review real quick. Your picks this weekend are Nyquist,
Exaggerator, and Cherry Wine.
Okay, and I'm going to go Nyquist, Exaggerator, and Stradivari.
1-3-5.
You're going 1-3-5. I'm going 3-5-11 in the Preakness this weekend. Best of luck to all you guys out. Guys, I'm kicking you out. You're done.
See ya.
I'm going to talk to Todd, and we're going to hopefully get some winners and some more updates. 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. The Paddock Pass here, joined by TVG horse racing analyst Todd Schrupp, live from the Preakness in Baltimore. Todd, how we doing, man?
Doing great today, Brian, but tomorrow the weather is going to be a real issue. That's kind of the big subject that everybody's talking around here, but on Black-Eyed Susan Day, it couldn't be better as far as condition. You can probably see for 10 miles, clear skies, and they're going to have a beautiful day of racing on Friday, but 90% chance of showers on Saturday, so everyone's wondering what type of racetrack we're going to have for the Preakness.
So we talked to you before the Derby. Now that we're 2 weeks removed from it, give me your impressions about Nyquist. How impressed were you with his performance?
Well, first of all, let's start with me. How dumb am I?
We had you on. I was all over dancing candy after that conversation.
Oh, I know. I was very convincing, including to myself. And by the way, since that time, Dancing Candy's been transferred to a new trainer because apparently the previous trainer didn't even want to run in the Derby. Information I could have used before the Derby. But, Nyquist I saw in the first start of his career, and I knew he could be a really good horse. But yet, in his biggest moments, I found myself as a handicapper playing against him, the Florida Derby, the Kentucky Derby. But my impression is this. What he did in the Kentucky Derby, I thought was visually impressive, the move he made coming out of the far turn. And it's a move that, when you look at the Preakness, if that move is repeated, it wins 9 out of 10 times in the Preakness. So Nyquist, I mean, this is probably the wrong time for me to be jumping on board, but what he did in the Kentucky Derby was sensational. He ran beyond his pedigree, and that's not even going to probably be an issue moving forward, even if he wins the Preakness, moves on to the Belmont Stakes. So, look, he's undefeated at 8-for-8. He's trying to follow in the footsteps of Seattle Slew and win the Triple Crown as an undefeated horse, and he's definitely on track for it. So I walked away from the Derby knowing what I kind of already knew deep down inside, is that Nyquist is the best horse of this 3-year-old crop.
Well, let's move on to this weekend. As you mentioned a few minutes ago that you're expecting rain for the Preakness. How do you think that's going to affect the race?
It moves a couple of horses up. It does not move Nyquist back, and I think that's a very important point. I thought one of the most difficult racetracks during the Derby prep season, some would point to the Santa Anita Derby because they had an absolute quagmire there. But to me, it was the Florida Derby because they had some rain. It was kind of a quirky, cuppy racetrack. And so the fact that Nyquist was able to ship all across country and to perform well on a racetrack like that tells me that he's never going to have an issue with the racetrack. So don't look at an off racetrack tomorrow as a vulnerability with a horse like Nyquist. What you look at the off racetrack tomorrow is it's going to move some horses up. I would start with, obviously, Exaggerator, who won the Santa Anita Derby, as I said, on a track that had a lot of standing water. I don't think we'll have the same situation tomorrow. It might be more of a muddy racetrack, but Exaggerator will definitely move up under the circumstances. I think you could also take a look at Cherry Wine, big long shot for Dale Romans. Had a big effort on an off racetrack, but it was a race that was taken off the turf, so the competition wasn't great, but he can move up over the off going. And to me, the other horse that kind of comes into play, whether it's an off track or not, to be quite honest with you, is Stradivari. He draws the outside in the Preakness. When I was at Keeneland during the spring meet, he won an entry-level allowance race, dominated it by double-digit lengths, and the word was he was training great coming into the race, and then he delivered a tour de force performance. The fact that Todd Pletcher would then take him out of that spot and put him in the Preakness is good enough for me. So Stradivari is a new face tomorrow, and a horse that has the ability to run with this group. The question is, can he take another move forward off an entry-level allowance? Can he at least maintain that form? And he's a horse that I think would be helped out by an off racetrack.
Todd Schrupp, horse racing analyst from TVG. You can follow him on Twitter at ToddTVG. Now, Todd, there's only two other horses besides Nyquist that are coming back from the Derby to run in the Preakness. That's Lonnie and Exaggerator. Are you surprised at the lack of amount of horses that are coming back from the Derby and running in the Preakness?
Not really, Brian. That's a very intuitive question. In our sport, it's not as it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, when you started in the Kentucky Derby, you essentially were committing yourself to the Triple Crown. You're going to be there for all three races in 5 weeks. That's what's kind of interesting about the Japanese-based horse Lonnie, that they've committed to all three races no matter what happens. That's really a throwback approach. But in the modern game, if you don't win the Kentucky Derby or run particularly well, you wait till the Belmont Stakes. Because no trainer in this day and age wants to come back in 2 weeks unless they have to. I thought Doug O'Neill was very self-effacing when they asked him about keeping a horse in form from the Kentucky Derby to the Preakness. And he said it's actually the easiest because it's such a short amount of time that ultimately you can't screw them up in any way. And so with horses like Nyquist and Exaggerator, yeah, it makes sense for them to move on. But anyone else, Lanny was a big surprise that they committed the way they did. But, yeah, in the modern game, you don't come back in 2 weeks unless you absolutely have to.
I know a lot of you guys at TVG use the Timeform US pace projections. Now, how do you see the pace setting up for the Preakness?
I see it as a hot pace. Uncle Lino draws post position number 2. He's right next to Nyquist. I actually think that's an advantage for Nyquist because he's got one of the fastest horses to his inside. He can let that horse clear off, and Mario Gutierrez can take up a stalking trip. The other horse that's kind of interesting is the maiden in the field, Leoban, which means the boss in Mandarin Chinese. But he also happens to be trained by Eric Guillot, who's a Cajun who has a thick accent that sounds like Mandarin Chinese. You can't understand him sometimes. But I saw Eric the other day in the stable area. I said, "Are you going to shock the world on Saturday?" He goes, "It wouldn't be the first time." But then he claims that they might even take a sit-back approach. If that happens, Uncle Lino could be a horse that gets out on a clear lead, but he's going to be really, really fast in the early stages. I see a hot pace overall, whether it's Uncle Lino by himself, whether it's Leoban and Uncle Lino going at it, and I really think it's going to be another ideal trip for Nyquist with where he drew and where the speed is at.
All right, Todd. So if I'm a handicapper and I'm trying to take out the two big betting favorites, which will obviously be Nyquist and Exaggerator, who else can I look towards to try and make some money in this race?
Well, then I'm definitely taking a look at Stradivari. I was just so impressed with what he did at Keeneland. And when you talk about the pace scenario and different options that could come up during the race, I think the outside draw for Stradivari and John Velasquez is absolutely perfect. He can pick out whatever trip he wants. Stradivari kind of a wise guy horse, and I think ultimately he'll get well backed from his morning line, but he'll still offer some value because you're looking at a 3-5 morning line favorite in Nyquist, a very, very solid second choice in Exaggerator. So you'll still get fair value with just about anyone else up and down the board. Stradivari will get his play, but he'll still be decent odds compared to his ability. And then I go back to Cherry Wine along the rail. He was on the also eligible list for the Kentucky Derby. Obviously, he didn't get in because there were no scratches in the body of the field. But he also was a horse that I thought ran a huge race in the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes at Keeneland last time out. His stablemate Brody's Cause ended up winning that race, but I thought he was just as good with the big run that he made late. I also like the fact that he draws the rail. Corey Lannery kind of is a jockey that I've always felt that's a good spot for him no matter what the distance is. I think he'll work out a nice trip too. So if I'm definitely looking beyond those top two heavy favorites, it's Stradivari and it's Cherry Wine.
All right, Todd, before I put you on the spot, tell the listeners about the big changes that are coming to Monmouth Park this summer.
Well, Monmouth Park is in a progressive state for parimutuel betting in New Jersey. New Jersey has been a leader in so many ways with what they've done, not only in the thoroughbred part of parimutuel wagering, but also in the standardbred industry. And so TVG has partnered with two very great racetracks there in Monmouth and the Meadowlands. And along the way, working with the horseman groups that are in New Jersey, they have passed exchange wagering. And it is now legal for New Jersey residents to bet on those New Jersey races with exchange wagering. And exchange wagering, there's a company called Betfair, which is our parent company, and they recently merged with Paddy Power to make one company. But for those who aren't familiar, Betfair is based out of Hammersmith, England. They launched about the same time as TVG, and Betfair introduced a new style of wagering. And what exchange wagering is, let's say, Brian, you and I looked at a race. Let's take Nyquist as an example. You like Nyquist in the race. I don't like Nyquist in the race. Nyquist may be a 3-5 favorite in the Preakness, but because I think he's vulnerable, I offer him to you at 8-5. So, in other words, you're going to bet me at 8-5. You're going to get Nyquist. You're going to lock in a better price than what you would have in the parimutuel pool, and then essentially Betfair would take a percentage for arranging that wager between you and I. So it's basically peer-to-peer wagering, and you can offer whatever price you want. So take any race that you might have on a daily basis. You can look at it and say, I know this favorite's going to lose, but you don't necessarily know who's going to win. So rather than trying to find the winner in the race, you can offer a higher price on that vulnerable favorite, and then people will bet you with that favorite. There's all kinds of different opportunities that exchange wagering brings up, but New Jersey is the first to have it here in the United States. When Betfair launched the same time as TVG, they eventually grew in to the global leader in online wagering, and exchange wagering was a big part of that. There's another part to exchange wagering which is totally fascinating to me. It's called in-play wagering. So not only can you make a wager where you find someone who wants to offer a particular price on a horse, you can then play the race as it's happening. And because of the technology used by Betfair, you will watch the odds change during the running of the race. It's fascinating. So a horse that maybe is quick out of the gate but breaks slowly, their price will go up. And then if they recover from that, you'll watch their price go down. So exchange wagering, to me, is the future for horse racing, and it can also bring in a new type of player, the type of player who's maybe used to the financial markets, because the technology used to process the bets and exchange wagering is the same thing that is essentially used on the NASDAQ and the stock market at large. So I think you're going to get a more sophisticated player that's going to understand horse racing more. It's going to bring new money into the game, and New Jersey is at the forefront. And on the books in California, they can have exchange wagering. It's just up to the horsemen's groups to come to an agreement and make it happen. But I think New Jersey is the first beachhead that will eventually see exchange wagering come all across the country, and it's going to be great for horse racing.
So, Todd, from what I heard right, are you giving me 8-5 odds Saturday for Nyquist? Can I take that?
Here's the thing. I would have been cleaned out in the Kentucky Derby. I wouldn't be able to offer anything in the Preakness after that horrible opinion of Nyquist. But, yeah, Brian, that's exactly how it works. If you think I'm wrong, you'll make me pay for it. And, you have to have your funds available to pay out after the race, for sure.
Well, we'll have to do that, and then we can meet up during the Belmont and see who's cleaning out whose pockets then. But, all right, Todd.
Absolutely.
It's that time. Who's winning the Preakness this weekend?
Oh, boy. I mean, after all this time, here I am back on Nyquist now. Here's the thing. I do believe this off-racetrack is going to play a factor. Exaggerator has looked very, very good here, but I just think Nyquist, with what he's done to date and with the way the trip plays out, I think you're going to see a very, very obvious finish in here. I think you're going to see the two horses, two of those three that you mentioned that returned out of the Kentucky Derby, ultimately dominate this race. I think Exaggerator will be closer than he has previously, but ultimately Nyquist's big run makes a difference. So I see what we saw in the Kentucky Derby. I see Nyquist over Exaggerator, and then maybe Cherry Wine or Stradivari kind of sucking up third there. But I think it's going to be a very predictable Preakness this Saturday.
Todd Schrupp, TVG horse racing analyst. Follow him again on Twitter at ToddTVG. Todd, thanks so much for giving us the time today, man. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Brian. Hopefully I'll have a better opinion this time around, and look forward to talking to you when it's Belmont time.